Hello, everybody. How you guys doing? My name is Mark. This is Why I Hate the World. What's happening? So I am streaming tonight on Friday night instead of our usual time on Saturday because I have stuff to do tomorrow, unfortunately, which cannot be avoided, but that's okay. Figure I'd do it a little early, little Friday night impromptu stream because there's a couple things I want to talk about. So this stream might actually be a little bit shorter, but we'll see. So, first thing, before we get into the meat and bones of what we're going to be discussing, let's take a look at what we're working on. So, so far it's looking pretty good. We've got a lot going on in this corner up here. I'm thinking maybe I might cut this in half and, because I'm kind of starting to get a little bored of it. You know what I mean? I mean, we've been working on it for like 3 months now at this point. But we'll keep going for a little bit. Maybe I'll just cut it to like this, like that, and then just do this as a finished piece, and then maybe like eventually come back to the rest of it. But I don't know. We'll just do that for a little bit. We'll focus on a little bit more up here, and as we go on through tonight. So tonight, a couple things I want to talk about. First, I want to spend some time talking about Lauren Boebert. So Lauren Boebert, which she just had a major scandal drop tonight. If you guys are not aware of that, Lauren Boebert is of course one of the super insane class of freshman Republicans who, over the last couple of years, grabbed a lot of headlines, along with Marjorie Taylor Greene and Madison Cawthorn and a couple of other insane people. And she just had a super big scandal come out about her. See, Lauren Boebert is being accused of being an escort, which is incredibly funny and ridiculous, and incredibly, if true, also incredibly hypocritical of her. Because Lauren Boebert is from she's from the family values crowd, right? So this came from the same pack that, let me go ahead and put it down in the stream for you guys. Here's the source on this, right? Fireboebert.com. And these are the same people who released all of that damning information on Madison Cawthorn. I'm sure you've all heard about this. This has been in the news, stuff like that. If you run in liberal circles for sure, you've definitely heard of this scandal and you know these people. They took down Madison Cawthorn by releasing, lots of dirt on him. And basically, he ended up losing his primary. So, they released a couple of videos of him doing some strange, oh, wrong layer there, slightly homoerotic things with a friend, and then also one where he was basically butt naked, shoving his junk into his cousin's face, and kind of getting some oral from a person that he said was his cousin, and a couple of other things. Then a couple of videos of one of his staffers feeling him up, and then another like picture of him wearing a dress and some other things. And of course, this got a lot of negative press on him, and he lost his primary. So Madison Cawthorn, once this current congressional session is over with, is going home and will no longer be a congressman, which is great, which is fantastic. And now this same group is doing the same thing to Lauren Boebert, you know, um, which really doesn't surprise me that they were able to find this information. So here's the thing: this is all alleged, right? Could turn out not to be true, but why don't we read exactly what is going on, what the accusations are? Okay, so this comes from, like I said, fireboebert.com, right? And here is, let's open up a laptop window. Let me just make this a little smaller here so we're not like, completely, yeah, we'll make it like about that big. So apparently, here's the story. Lauren Boebert was a paid escort and had 2 abortions. That would not be a big deal, right? Because, I mean, millions of women out there get abortions, and I'm sure, many, many women out there are escorts as well. Probably numbers in the millions, right? Oh, excuse me. But the thing is that Lauren Boebert comes from the family values crowd. She comes from the guns, glory, and God. You know, Jesus Christ is my personal co-pilot uh, branch of the Republican Party, right? So it is highly, highly, she's been very, very vocal about being anti-choice, you know, very, very vocal about banning abortion, was very happy when the news from the Supreme Court came, that leak from the Supreme Court came that they were going to overturn Roe versus Wade, stuff like that, you know. So to hear that not only was she a sex worker, because that's what an escort is. I mean, I know, yes, there are escorts that don't have sex with their clients, but apparently the allegation is she did, right? So not only was she a sex worker, but she apparently forgot to, like, wear some protection during that. She forgot to wrap it, which is something that you should always do even when you're not a sex worker. You should always wear protection, especially when you're having sex with slimy politicians, like we'll get to in a minute. And apparently, she had to get 2 abortions, at least one of which, allegedly, this is all allegedly, was connected to her work as a sex worker. So that's really, yeah. Talk about hypocritical. Now, here's the thing about this, right? Because, and I'm not the only person to say this, but many people on the left are basically saying they don't care about the sex worker part. And that's the truth, because we on the left do not, you know, give a shit about that kind of thing. People on the left generally support sex work. They want to make it legal most of the time. Most people on the left want to make sex work legal. Most people on the left are not, prone to slut shaming people. And this is what we have to remember. These leaks are not from people on the left, they're from other Republicans. That's the first thing. The other thing we got to remember is that they're not designed to cater to the left either. These are not things that are designed to target leftist voters, or not even leftist voters, but like just Democrats in general. This is all leaks. These are all designed to ruin her reputation with the right wing, right? That's the whole point of this thing, and that's kind of what they did to Madison Cawthorn. You know, the whole point is to make her a liability so that the Republican Party itself will basically take a shit on her. So when it comes time for, the election, they stop giving her money and then she loses. That's the entire point behind all of this, right? Behind these leaks. And, I say good because fuck Lauren Boebert. That's what I say, right? And that's the thing. So that's the thing we got to remember is that we're not the people like because this is something that you'll see on Twitter. Like Twitter and a couple other places where people are defending Lauren Boebert, saying, "Hey, don't slut shame her," stuff like that. You know, sex work is real work. Don't slut shame her, etc. Well, we're not the people who are slut shaming her, right? It's other Republicans are the ones who are slut shaming her, the conservatives, right? Those are the people who are slut shaming her. We on the left wouldn't give a shit, you know. The liberals, the progressives, we don't give a fuck about that. I would even support this if she would have came out in the beginning and just admitted it and be like, yeah, that was me and I did it. So here's the thing about it, right? Apparently, this was in 2019, which is really not that long ago. And apparently she was bankrupt and she had an account on something called sugardaddy.com, I believe is what it is. It says here it was sugardaddymeat.com. Okay, it says it right there, right? Oh, well, it's not. It doesn't let you click this to highlight it. I guess they don't want you copying it. Let's make this just a little bit bigger. Um, there we go. Sugardaddymeat.com, and she was looking for, quote, side income and called her work pay to play, and she was paid to escort wealthy men, according to firebober.com. Allegedly. This is all allegedly. Right. And according to our investigation, let me just read it out for you guys. According to our investigation, Boebert was hired by a wealthy male client in Aspen, Colorado, who was a Koch family member. Okay, Koch Industries, right. There's only one of those guys who's alive at this point, right? So that kind of narrows down who the Koch family members allegedly is, isn't that right? Boebert's rich client subsequently introduced her to U.S. Senator Ted Cruz in Aspen. After meeting with Senator Cruz, Boebert was encouraged by Cruz to run for political office. When Boebert announced her campaign for Congress in December of 2019, Senator Cruz donated at least $136,250 to the Boebert campaign and helped her raise large sums of money during trips Boebert made to Texas. Boebert didn't disclose a $70,500 donation made by Cruz until Cruz's Federal Election Commission filings contradicted her own filings. So that's very telling. I did not know that Ted Cruz and Lauren Boebert were tight with each other like that. Let's continue on here. Boebert had an abortion at a clinic in Grand Junction, Colorado, sometime in 2004 or 2005 when she was approximately 18 years old. It is not known whether this abortion was related to SugarDaddyMeat.com clients or someone else. Probably not. That seems like that's a long time ago. Then Boebert, 23 at the time, had an abortion in 2009 at the Planned Parenthood clinic in Glenwood Springs, Colorado, due to her work with a SugarDaddyMeat.com client. So she was doing this for a while. Okay. So this was like, wow. So apparently, if this is true, then she's been doing this for over 10 years. So, wow, all right. American muckrakers obtained this information through an exhaustive investigation and a tip from a verified source close to this matter who has requested anonymity for fear of reprisals. So there's a lot of different places out there that are debunking this and such, and we'll get into those in a minute. But there were a couple of pictures that these guys supplied. Let me just go to my images here. Okay. So supposedly this picture here, let's move this over here. Supposedly this picture here on the right is Lauren Boebert, and I would say that really looks like her, right? Now, according to the Daily Mail, they're saying this picture isn't her. They're saying this picture is Melissa Carone, right? Who, if you remember Melissa Carone, she was Rudy Giuliani's star witness. So this is Melissa Carone right here. You know, you remember remember when Rudy Giuliani was trying to like, last year trying to like bullshit everybody into thinking the election was stolen, and he got this crazy lady that went up and like said a bunch of shit, and she was like obviously like on drugs or something. They're saying that picture is her. I don't think so. Let's move this over here. I could just sort of drag and drop that. Actually, you know what? Let's drag and drop it over here, right? Those don't look like the same faces to me. Look at top woman's face versus Carone's face. You can kind of see it's got that sort of elongated. Look at her nose. Not really the same, right? So this is what the Daily Mail is saying. Daily Mail is saying this picture isn't Boebert, that it's really this other person. But I don't think so. In fact, I could just delete that. I don't need that anymore. Here's another picture floating around on the internet. Now, keep in mind, this picture here on the left was already on the internet before this scandal dropped. And apparently, Lauren Boebert had a model Like there's some website out there where you can basically like put up your portfolio if you want to be a model. And this is Lauren Boebert, like who tried to be a model at one time, right? And yeah, those kind of look like the same person, don't they? They look like the same person to me. Like let's zoom into that a lot. Look at her face there. Kind of pretty close, I'd say. So I don't know. I'm thinking that it's actually her, but I that's just what I think. I mean, I'm just a guy. I'm speculating. I'm not actually saying it's her, you know, because, this is all alleged, right? And it could turn out that it really isn't her, and I guess we'll find out in the future. But if it is her, that's incredibly hypocritical, extremely hypocritical, right? And doesn't really surprise me at all. So Lauren Boebert, if you guys don't know, has a criminal record. She's done lots of really skeezy things. She has like this white trash husband who was busted like from like indecent exposure. Like apparently her husband pulled his wang out in front of like little girls at a fucking bowling alley, and apparently Lauren Boebert was there for that. So it's sort of like, and then she had like all this weird shit with her like restaurant where she poisoned these people and stuff like that, like at her fucking like food poisoning at a restaurant, that kind of thing. So anyway, let's turn this shit off here for a second. Let's get rid of that. Anyway, I what I really find really telling, I think the most tantalizing part of this entire thing with Lauren Boebert here is the Ted Cruz angle. The fact that Ted Cruz got her start in politics. I didn't know that. I didn't know that they were like, friends or whatever, and that he gave her like all that money to get started. And if it's true that Ted Cruz met her through one of her Johns, right? Did Ted Cruz have sex with Lauren Boebert? I mean, what other reason would you have if you're a rich guy and you have an escort, right? Do you bring your escort around to meet your rich guy friends? Do you really do that? Do you be like, can you imagine like Bill Gates and like say fucking Elon Musk and like, Jeff Bezos hanging out playing golf one day and like Jeff Bezos has a high class like fucking prostitute. It's like, "Hey guys, I want y'all to meet Sandy." Now, this is Sandy, right? Like, no. No, you don't do that. You don't bring like your fucking prostitute girlfriend like it's not even a girlfriend. It's somebody you fucking paid for. You don't introduce people like that to your friends. That's bullshit. So what other reason would Ted Cruz have to even associate with an escort if not to have sex with her? I just find it highly, highly unlikely that he happened to just meet her, that Charles Koch or whoever it is that she was with, allegedly, just happened to bring her around the fucking country club and be like, "Oh, meet my good friend Ted Cruz." Bullshit. That's unbelievable. I find that to be unbelievable. I find the idea that Lone Bobert was a fucking like, hooker. I mean, if that's true, you know, if it turns out to be true, I find that highly believable. I find that extremely believable. It just fits everything that we know about her, you know? It fits the fits like the fucking skeezy like reputation, you know, the fucking the attitude, right? The complete and the complete hypocrisy that. And here's the thing about this, right? Because like I said earlier, this is for other Republicans, right? This is the whole point behind this is to ruin her reputation so that the Republican Party drops her. Same thing that they did to Madison Cawthorn, right? I don't think it's going to work. You know, I don't think it's going to work against Lauren Boebert. And you want to know why I don't think it's going to work? Because it only worked against Madison Cawthorn because they outed him essentially as being gay. That's what they did. Even though he denied it and all that other shit, he's fucking gay. All right, you don't do what he did. You don't let guys touch your fucking junk unless you're like into it, you know? Like seriously. Seriously, if I'm like driving there's a video of like Madison Cawthorn's like friend, right? I guess he was one of his staffers, right? And they're driving and his staffer just reaches his hand over and grabs his fucking cock, just grabs his dick. And they pans up to Madison Cawthorn, and Madison Cawthorn smiles at him, right? Now, me myself personally, I would not consider myself to be homophobic at all, right? I am very open, I believe, in my sexuality. I am very, firm in my sexuality, where I'm not afraid of gay people, right? Because that's what homophobic does not mean that you are afraid physically of gay people, that you're afraid gay people are going to come beat you up or something. That's not what homophobic means, right? Homophobic means that you are afraid that you yourself might be gay. And so you project hatred out onto gay people. That's what homophobic means. Okay. By that extension, homophobic also, it also applies to trans people. You know, the reason why it's an apt description, transphobic, people who act like that towards trans people. The reason why it's an apt description is because the person who's lashing out is actually afraid they may be attracted to a trans person. They're not afraid that they themselves will be trans. They're afraid that they might be attracted to a trans person, and that's why they react violently, right? And if you're secure in yourself, you know, then you don't act that way, right? If you're secure in yourself and your sexuality, you have no reason to act that way, and it doesn't bother you when other people do shit that you don't agree with. It doesn't bother you that if two guys want to go off and do their thing, it doesn't really it's like it's not a thing that I even think about. It doesn't cross my mind at all in the slightest. When I walk down the street and I see two dudes holding hands, it's just like good for them. That's what I think. Right? It doesn't elicit any hate or fear or anything like that. And because I'm secure in myself, right? So even me, with my secureness, if some dude were to reach over and grab my dick, I would probably object to that. Okay? Because it's like, it has nothing to do with homophobia. It has to do with fucking like, that's like abuse right there, man. That's like sexual assault. You don't just grab somebody's dick, right? Like without having a relationship first, at least, right? I mean, at the very least, I should, maybe we ought to be dating first before you grab my dick. You know what I mean? Like maybe you got to go to a couple dinners first. Like, what's the rule? You got to go out like maybe 3 or 4 times. Is it the same rule that do gay people have the same rule that straight people do? That they're like maybe on the third or fourth date, and then it's like that's when you start making your moves, right, or whatever. Like, I don't know. I haven't dated in a long time. I'm married. But you get my drift. You get what I'm saying here. I myself personally would object to that. And I find the fact that he didn't object, that Madison Cawthorn not only didn't object, but laughed at it and actually smiled at the guy with a somewhat come hitherto look, tells me that he's gayer than a $3 bill. Right? So, and the thing is, here's the thing about that, right? If he would have just admitted that, then there would be no problem. If he just would have said, "Yeah, I'm gay, deal with it," you know, then he probably would have won his seat, right? And that's why he lost. He lost because they outed him as gay, right? That's why this sort of muckraking, like I guess muckraking smear tactic is what this is. Even if it does turn out to be true, it's still smear tactic. That's why it was effective against Mass and Cawthorn, because basically Republicans are homophobic and they saw him, oh, he's gay. So then that's why they voted him out. I don't think it's going to work against Lauren Boebert. I don't think it will. I think that she's gonna be able to turn it around, and even if it comes out that it's true, they're not gonna give a shit. Because the one thing that Republicans do not care about is hypocrites. They don't give a fuck about that. They don't care if like the person they vote for is like a fucking philandering douchebag. Like Donald Trump. Donald Trump was like fucking president for 4 years, cheated on his wife with like a porn star, right? And here's the thing about that. He didn't even deny it. He's like, did Donald Trump ever say, no, I didn't do it? No, no. All he did was insult her and all that, fucking Stormy Daniels. He never like said, yeah, I didn't do it. And here's the thing, none of his fans, none of his followers ever denied that he did it either. They just simply don't care, right? And that's what's going to happen here. It's going to come out that Lauren, if it comes out that this is true, right? Just hypothetically, if it turns out to be true, right? The people that support her aren't going to give a shit. They're just going to either say it's fake news, it's just all an attack by the Democrats or some shit like that, or they're just going to ignore it and be like, yeah, well, that was her in the past and now it's whatever. Now she's a congressman, right? So that's it's I don't think it's going to work. I think she's probably going to end up winning and just be disgraced. But I don't know, we'll see. I hope it works. I hope it works because you know why I hope it works? Because fuck Lauren Boebert. That's why I hope it works. Right? Lauren Boebert is like a traitor. Let's not forget that. During the January 6th thing, she was tweeting out the location of Nancy Pelosi, basically trying to get, you know, trying to direct the fucking like January 6th invaders, right? Like to like find where Nancy Pelosi was so that they could go murder her. Let's not forget this shit, all right? This is big in the news now because of the hearings. She actually fucking did that, all right? So anyway, so fuck Lauren Boebert. I hope it works. I hope she fucking goes back to her dumbass restaurant and has to like, because Lauren Boebert has no business being in Congress, like at all, right? She's a fucking moron. She's a moron and a traitor and possibly a hypocrite of the highest order. So I have no sympathy for her ass at all. She's not a victim in this in the slightest. And that's another thing they're gonna try to pull the victim angle. She's not a fucking victim. All right. If it was up to her, Lauren Boebert, if it's actually true and she got two abortions, right? She's now someone who wants to take that away from other women. So it's okay for her to do it, not okay for anybody else, right? Hypocrites. Fuck every last one of them. Anyway, this is all it could turn out to not be true. So we got to keep that in mind too. Could turn out to just be bullshit. Could turn out to just be, some slimy attack thing. And if that's the case, then good for her. I hope she sues them. And, if it turns out not to be true, then fine. Okay, that doesn't mean I still don't think she's a bitch. Like, who should not be within 20, 10 feet of any fucking like congressional building, right? It's not going to change my opinion on her just because somebody like, if it turns out that somebody fucking like tried to like, smear her, not going to change my opinion on her at all because, as far as I'm concerned, bitch deserves it. Lewis Hedgehog, hey, what's going on? Anyway, let's get into the main meat of what we are going to talk about. Ben Shapiro. So, Ben Shapiro, as you know, is a Second Amendment person who really supports the Second Amendment. He is also an idiot. And we are going to take some time. Let me just move my thing over here since I'm going to be like, I don't even need these things with the notes anymore. Let's see, but we can put this down in the thing. Here's the video we're going to be watching, right? It's always fun to make fun of Ben Shapiro because he is a weaselly little worm. Let me turn on I can get rid of that too. Turn on my other screen. There we go. Let's make this a little smaller so YouTube doesn't kill my stream here. So this is a video from Ben Shapiro. Let's make that full screen. There we go. where this aired shortly after a crazy person went and threatened Brett Kavanaugh, right? Justice Kavanaugh. So, what's the backstory here? Well, we had that Supreme Court leak with Roe v. Wade, which is, still pretty egregious. It's still pretty much in the news. People are angry over that, right? And apparently, somebody went there to allegedly went to Brett Kavanaugh's house to blow him away, right? Now, the guy that went there called the police on himself, which kind of makes me a little suspicious of the dude's motives. Okay. So this is the story. So the dude shows up at Brett Kavanaugh's house, right? There's protests and stuff going on outside of his house already. A lot of the Republicans are appalled by that. They can't handle the fact that people go to someone's fucking houses and like and protest at them, right? Because you got to remember, Republicans don't like being held accountable for anything. They like doing all the shit that they do and getting away with it. But if anybody ever tries to hold them accountable, they always go nuts. And so this is one thing you're saying. No, there shouldn't be people outside of the man's house. Fuck that. Right? If you are going to be in the public eye, especially if you're going to be a Supreme Court justice, and if you're going to lie about something like abortion and then do the exact opposite of what you said you would do when it comes to abortion, you should be prepared for the backlash, right? Please remember when Brett Kavanaugh was confirmed as a Supreme Court justice, he said that Roe v. Wade was established law and that he would not vote to overturn it. And according to this leaked decision, that was a complete lie. He lied. He lied to us. People are angry, and people deserve to be angry, right? So, yeah, and if that means that, here's the thing about it, right? Protesting outside of someone's house on a public street is 100% legal, right? Republicans believe this too. You remember what all those fucking that stupid fucking like freedom convoy thing where they were up in Ottawa and just like honking their fucking horns all night long, pissing everybody off, right? That's the exact same thing. That's public protesting in a public place, right? Not very much difference between that and going to Brett Kavanaugh's house and standing outside peacefully with a sign, banging some pots and pans or something, right? Maybe because you're pissed off at them. There's really no difference there. So if you support one of those things, if you support these freedom truckers, then you also need to support, you know, protesters outside of a Supreme Court's residence. Okay, Supreme Court justice residence, because those are essentially the same forms of protest there. So anyway, getting back to the story, crazy person shows up, sees a bunch of cops and stuff outside of Brett Kavanaugh's house, decides to call the police on himself. Like he sees these guards, turns around, and here's the thing about this, right? This guy, it's not like the police were chasing him or anything. He could have just walked away if he really wanted to. He could have just got it in his car, drove away, and they never would have caught him. And he could have come back a different day. But he decided instead to call the police on himself and turn himself in. That's what happened, right? It's not like they caught him. It's not like he tried to kill the guy. He just drove to his house, had some guns on him, changed his mind, turned himself in when he didn't even have to turn himself in. So let's listen to Ben Shapiro. Now I'm going into this completely blind. I have not. This is how long is this? This is 12 minutes long, so we'll probably take us a fucking hour to get through it because I tend to ramble on. Sorry, I'll try not to ramble so much. Right. But I'm going into this 100% blind. I have no idea what Ben Shapiro's about to say, so let's go ahead and get started.
If this had happened to a Democratic,
It might help if I turned on the audio. Could you guys hear that? I couldn't hear that. Hang on a second.
justice, a democratic
All right, the audio's playing, but how come I cannot hear the audio? What's up with that? Give me 1 second, guys. Oh, it's because I have it turned off.
appointed justice.
Okay, now I can hear it. All right, sorry. Starting all over. Here we go.
If this had happened to a Democratic justice, a Democratic appointed justice, and it had been a Republican gunman who was loitering outside that justice's house with a gun in his backpack and zip ties and a knife and pepper spray and full preparations to kill that justice and his or her family, you can imagine that it would not just be the top news of every major news network. It would be the top news for weeks on end because it would all be chalked up to the evils of Republican rhetoric.
That actually happened. What he's describing here, it's not like this is like some hypothetical situation. This has happened a couple of times. Oh shit. I just unplugged something. Hang on a second, guys. What the hell just happened? Am I still streaming? I hope so. Shit, my monitors just died. Come on, turn on, turn on. I hope I'm streaming. Am I still? What the fuck? What happened? Sorry folks, having some technical difficulties. Says I'm streaming. Yeah, okay, sorry about that. No, but all my monitors just shut off and then they all came back on for some reason. That was that was bizarre. But anyway, getting back to the situation at hand. What he's describing actually happened a couple of times. So if you remember January 6th, there were people in that building with zip ties. You know, Ben Shapiro just mentioned zip ties. There were people in that building with zip ties. There were people in that building with knives, with weapons. There were guys planting bombs outside at the DNC. Let's not forget that. There were people, these people were out there searching for Nancy Pelosi, searching for AOC, right? Searching for Mike Pence. You know, there's people out there, you know, ready to kill. Okay, that's what was going on. There were gallows outside, you know, especially Nancy Pelosi. They were all over Nancy Pelosi trying to find her. So that actually happened. And, you know, it's not like there's never been attempted assassination attempts, like, you know, attempted assassinations against Democrats ever. I mean, Gaffy Giffords, like, got shot in the fucking head. All right. Somebody actually did shoot her. So, you know, and it's not just, you know, it's not just Democrats. I mean, I think Steve Scalise was shot, right? So it's like, yeah, what he's describing right there actually happened, and it was national news, right? This was also national news. This Brett Kavanaugh. I mean, it was like all over the place for like fucking 3 days. All right. But here's the thing about it. It's like, yeah, maybe it wasn't fucking front page on the New York Times or whatever because the guy turned himself in. So when you have an assassination attempt where the assassin doesn't make an attempt, then it's not really that big of a news, is it? I mean, that kind of thing happens all the time. You know, like how many times does it seriously, like these types of what we're describing right here, where like a crazy person like gets caught stalking a politician or something, that happens constantly, you know. And if we, you know, we just don't hear about it most of the time because they never get past any particular stage like it did here. It like never goes anywhere. The cop catches them, security catches them, somebody turns them in, whatever. They get caught driving down there, that kind of thing. You know, that is sort of the risk you take when you become a politician is that you need security all of a sudden because there's going to be some crazy person out there that, you know, I guess not even when you're a politician, just when you become famous, that's always a risk. But, you know, it's not like no one fucking talked about it. If you were to listen to Ben Shapiro here, it makes it sound like that, you know, the evil liberal media buried the story and like squashed anyone who tried to talk about it. It's like that didn't fucking happen. What the fuck is he talking about? You know. Anyway, let's move on.
and the fiery oratory of people on Fox News. It'd be chalked up to shows like this one. It'd be chalked up to every Republican politician. Every single Republican politician in America would be asked about the increase in the temperature of the rhetoric that had led to this awful point in American life. We know that's true because after January 6th, the idea is that every Republican everywhere is answerable for a couple of hundred idiots going into the Capitol building and doing violence to police officers and then promptly being arrested.
Yeah. So one person going to a politician's house, right? Because Brett Kavanaugh is a politician, right? Even though he's a Supreme Court justice, but still. Okay, I'll correct myself. I'll correct myself. One person going to a Supreme Court justice's house with a gun and then turning himself in before he commits any crime is light years different than literally thousands of people showing up to steal an election for a president who lost, right? Murdering, like, murdering a police officer, injuring 127 others, right? That's like, what was it, 120, 128, I think, police officers who were murdered, not murdered, injured, missing fingers, getting the crap beat out of them, stuff like that. It was like a shitload, right? Breaking into the Capitol and attempting to kill Congress. These are not even close to the same things. There's a reason why they're still talking about January 6th, fucking like a year and a half later. Okay. There's a reason why there's congressional hearings at this very, like, week where they're like trying to present to because they're trying to present it to the American public, like, hey, this is what happened, because the narrative is being muddied by the Republicans. The Republicans are trying to muddy this. And yeah, the Democrats are doing this in order to like win the election. I'm not going to deny that at all because that's exactly what it is, right? But this actually fucking happened. They got a point and they need to make their case, and I'm surprised they didn't do the shit earlier, you know. This is a world of difference. This is not even close to the same thing. This is like apples and oranges, you know. An attempted coup d'etat versus a disturbed individual who like called the police on himself. You don't call it like I just can't understand that. You don't call the police on yourself if you're looking to actually do harm, right? Seriously. Like when was the last time you heard of a bank robber driving to the bank and then calling the cops on himself saying, "Hey, I've got a gun. I was going to rob this bank." Never. When was the last time a drug dealer said, "You know what?" calls the police and says, "Hey, I have like a pound of cocaine on myself. I'm carrying it with me. I was about to sell it to these children over here." When was the last time that happened? Never. Kind of sounds like this dude was aware, and kind of sounds like a cry for help if you ask me. I don't know. I don't know enough about him to say if he was mentally ill or whatever, you know. But if I had to take a bet, I would bet that this person was not all there. Knew that he had a problem, knew what he was doing was wrong, and decided to prevent himself from going through with it in the best way he knew how. You call the police on yourself like this, like the only reason I could think that you would ever actually do it is if you knew that you were out of control and you needed help. That's like the only fucking time. You know what I mean? Sort of like when someone checks themselves into a rehab place, right? You don't check yourself into rehab if you think you don't have a problem. Seems like the exact same fucking thing to me. Anyway, so yeah. Now, before we move on though, I just want to kind of see what Ben Shapiro is doing when he's doing this. He's not just he's not just belittling the January 6th like event, saying that, oh, that's no big deal, you know? It's sort of like he's trying to basically elevate this, like, you know, crazy person at Justice Kavanaugh's house to the same level. And since Republicans already think that January 6th is no big deal anyway, he's basically, it's diminishing it in their eyes. That's what he's doing here. He's saying, see, this is not a big deal. This is a much more bigger deal than January 6th was. Why don't they shut up about January 6th? See, it's kind of like, it's kind of a trick. It's a little rhetorical trick in order to sway someone over to your point of view. You know, Ben Shapiro does shit like this all the time. That's one thing we got to remember about Ben Shapiro. He's, like I often say, Ben Shapiro is an idiot, right? He is, yes, not the smartest person, but he's very, very, very good at lying to people. He's extremely good at lying to people. He is very good at, like, using all of the debate tricks. Like, all of the scummy, backhanded debate tricks that trick people into thinking you're smart when in real life what you're saying is completely full of shit. He's an expert at that. And this is one of those trick series. He's basically comparing. I can't remember the name of the fallacy, but it's when you compare two things that are not the same in order to elevate one over the other. And that's what he's doing by comparing this. And then by that extension, like, belittle your opponent's, argument, right? And it's basically, so just keep that in mind. If he brings that up again, it's not even close to the same fucking thing. Anyway,
The idea is that we are all collectively guilty when somebody does a thing. When a white supremacist shooter murders a bunch of black people in Buffalo, New York, the entire Republican infrastructure is responsible. Fox News and Tucker Carlson are responsible. Candace Owens and I are somehow responsible for all of this sort of stuff. That is the rhetoric of the left. Whenever a bad thing happens, and that bad thing is even remotely connectable, even if it is not logically supportable, if you can connect it at the most tenuous level to some sort of broader right-wing thought, then we have to have a conversation about conservatism in this country. We have to have a conversation.
okay, okay. So he's referring to the Buffalo shooting, right? And why is that relevant? It's relevant because the Buffalo shooter was basically wrote a manifesto about the great replacement theory. Okay. So what he just said there, yeah, everybody on the right is responsible, me and Candace Owens. What he should have said was Tucker Carlson, right? But Candace Owens also kind of has said some things in support of the great replacement theory, right? Ben Shapiro has played footsie with the alt-right when it comes to stuff like this. I can't remember him specifically supporting the great replacement theory, but I would not be surprised if he had. I'd have to research that before I could definitively say he did. But that's what, yeah, so when you have somebody like basically the loudest voice on in Republican punditry, like when you have the loudest voice there spouting these sorts of right wing Nazi, Nazi rhetoric like that, right? And then you get a mass shooter that goes and kills 20 people who writes a fucking 128-page manifesto that says the exact same fucking thing, then there is a link, right? Then you should, link those two things together. Okay? And that's the difference. The difference is that people like him, like Tucker Carlson, like Candace Owens, right? They play with these people because they know that this is where they get their money from. They know that the people that are open to these ideas, that like white supremacists, are their biggest supporters. And so this is why, Ben Shapiro will say things like, he'll say things like Palestinians deserve, like living in sewers or whatever the fuck, like living in open sewage, shit like that. He'll say shit like that. He'll play, he'll play ball with these people, right? He'll play footsie with them. He never he'll never like he'll basically on the outside condemn them and white supremacy is bad. And then he'll turn around and say all the exact same shit that they are, that they say, right? And with a wink and a nod, because that's what he does. And that's what Tucker Carlson does. Ben Shapiro is on that boat, in that boat as well. So is Candace fucking Owens. Okay. And so's a lot of the, so is Alex Jones, right? So is a lot of right wing punditry. They're all in that same boat. They all do that exact same fucking thing, right? They because outrage sells. They know outrage sells. They know this is where they get their money from, you know. And they always, Ben Shapiro is smart enough to always give himself plausible deniability, right? But it's getting pretty tough to deny these things. It's getting pretty fucking tough that to deny that the people who are getting radicalized aren't being radicalized from mainstream punditry, mainstream Republican punditry, conservative punditry, I guess I should say, not Republican specifically, you know. So yeah, it's kind of like the exact opposite of what Ben Shapiro just said is true. Moving on.
About the evils of the right in this country. Well, yesterday, a man was arrested outside the house of Justice Brett Kavanaugh. He was arrested because he was fully intending to kill Justice Brett Kavanaugh, and he was armed and ready to do so. The only reason that he did not carry out his plan is because there was armed security outside Justice Brett Kavanaugh's house. Yet another reminder that armed security is a good thing wherever you have vulnerable people. I know some people have trouble with that when it comes to, for example, schools, but the simple fact is that if there had not been armed security
Yeah, okay. Two things to say about that, right? Please remember that this man that went to Brett Kavanaugh's house turned himself in. The armed security did not catch him. Okay. The police, the security there, they didn't chase him. They didn't go grab him, beat him down, throw him in handcuffs, whatever. He saw the security there, decided not to go through with it, called the police on himself. Right? So the good people with guns didn't really do anything here. Right? It wasn't, I mean, it's as far as like apprehending the suspect or whatever. They didn't do any of that shit. Okay. I guess maybe their very presence freaked the dude out, but you don't have much of a resolve to be a fucking murdering person, to be a murderer if all it takes is a dude just standing there to stop you, right? What the fuck kind of mass murderer is that? You're just gonna like change your mind the minute you see like the slightest fucking bit of resistance, right? Doesn't really sound like much of a mass shooter to me, does it? Doesn't really sound like much of a fucking political assassin either, right? So that's the first thing, you know. Second thing to keep in mind is like, he said, oh yeah, when armed security is good at schools that like some people don't want to recognize, right? He is referring to, you know, this idea that it takes a good person with a gun to stop a bad person with a gun, whatever. This is right after Uvalde, right? Right after we saw what the good people with the guns didn't actually fucking do their jobs and allowed 18 children to be murdered, right? See, that's the thing about this. This is how you know Ben Shapiro's a total fucking hack, okay? This is a way of him basically making the argument without having to engage in the opposition there, right? Because if you actually wanted to actually examine truthfully what that statement means, armed security at schools, right? You want to actually examine what that really means, then you have to look at you know, you have to look at when the armed security didn't actually work, right? I mean, we have a very high profile mass shooting where it didn't do very much. There actually was a cop there. The cop didn't stop him. You know, there actually were police that came there. They didn't go into the classroom and stop the guy, right? They allowed this dude to hole up in the classroom with children and fucking kill 18 of them, right? If you were honest about these things, if you actually if you really, really cared about mass shootings and you really thought that, okay, well, this is a possible solution. And I think it is. I think having security guards is part of the solution, right? It's not the complete and total solution like conservatives want it to be, right? They just want to stop there. It's like, no, no, that's part of the solution. Now you have to do the other part. You have to do the part where the crazy person has a hard time getting the gun, right? You notice that's the other thing that Shapiro is not bringing up here. He's not bringing up any aspect. We know that, okay, so this was a disturbed individual that went there to kill a Supreme Court justice. We admit that happened, right? Why did that person, if he's disturbed and crazy and deranged, how was he able to get his hands on a gun so easy? Seems like if you cared about the security of Supreme Court justices, if you cared about their ability to remain safe and not be shot to death by crazy people, a good place to start would be, how do we keep the crazy person from getting a gun in the first place? He's not bringing that up. He's not bringing that up at all. I predict he's not going to say anything at all about gun control. And remember, I think the only thing that he'll refer to gun control for is to, like, basically throw it in the toilet, right? I mean, here's an idea, because, conservatives don't have ideas, right? I've got an idea. How about we make everyone who buys a gun pass a psychological test? There you go. You got to get a psychological test from an accredited, actual real doctor, not some fucking scam artist from a diploma bill or whatever. And then you present your psychological clean bill of health, and then you walk out with that gun. How about that? Right? No, that'll never happen. You know why? Because that's an actual solution. That's actually a solution which actually may stop mass shooters, which actually may stop someone from going and actually threatening and and killing a politician or a Supreme Court justice. That's a solution that might actually work. And so there's no fucking way that any Republican ever is going to support that, right? Anyway, moving on.
At Brett Kavanaugh's house, then this person probably would have killed somebody. According to the New York Times, a man armed with a pistol, a knife, and other weapons was arrested near the Maryland home of Justice Brett Kavanaugh early Wednesday after he said he traveled from California to kill the Supreme Court justice, according to federal officials.
Hmm.
This particular offender, and again, I don't mention the names of people who are seeking attention like this on this show, unlike most other legacy media outlets, which spend inordinate time blowing up the name, picture, and profile of political terrorists.
That's another bullshit point. So this is another phony baloney non-solution that the Republicans have suggested. Just don't politicize the names of mass shooters. Like, somehow it's this idea that people are only doing it so that they'll be famous. It's like, oh, I'm gonna be famous. I'm gonna be known. I'm gonna be notorious. Just like these other people, right? Which is, quick. Name for me the name of the guy who engaged in the remember the shooting sometimes back at the there was like a country music festival in, I think it was in Arizona, and a guy goes up into a hotel and kills 50 people from his hotel window at this country music festival. Name that guy's name. Can't think of it? Do it without Googling if you can. I have no idea what that guy's name is, right? Quickly, what were the names of the two people at the Columbine shooting? There you go. That was a really famous shooting. Can you name them without actually using Google? Dylan something and somebody else? No, right? The reason why you can't name these people is because that's not a reason why people engage in mass shootings. No one actually goes to and engages in a mass shooting and goes and kills 50 people with the idea that I'm going to be notorious and people are going to remember me. That's complete bullshit. 100% bullshit. What was the name? Okay. What about the Batman shooting? Remember that? The Batman theater shooting? Guy like fucking dyes his hair, thinks he's the Joker, goes and kills 12 people in a movie theater. What was that guy's name? Can't think of it, huh? Right? Can't think of his name. It's because, you know, being famous is not part of the motive, right? There's so many other ways to get famous that shooting fucking 50 people is not one of them, right? That's bullshit. We could pass a law, and you know how I know it's bullshit because because it's like we already don't know their names. Nobody, like there's this. It's just it's an excuse, is what it is. It's an excuse that the Republicans and the conservatives have come up with because they're basically in denial about what needs to be done. They know what has to be done. They know that, you know, gun control is pretty much the only way to stop mass shootings, right? You know, they're in denial about it. As a country, we're in denial about this. The same way that we're in denial about global warming. The same way we're in denial about creeping fascism, right? That's slowly taken over the country. It seems to be accelerated recently, you know. Same way we're in denial about a lot of things, you know. Denial in this country that maybe the United States ain't so great. You know, we have this mythology of American exceptionalism. You know, you can only bullshit yourself for so long before reality finally sets in. And this is what it is. This is just the conservatives bullshitting themselves because they don't want to do anything about it. Because they like things the way they are. Ben Shapiro likes it when children get murdered, right? If he didn't like it, he would propose actual real solutions. He's not proposing actual real solutions. He's proposing bullshit solutions that he knows are bullshit. Thus, I must be forced to conclude that he likes it when children die. Sorry, that's just logic right there, man. Right? Uh, Lewis the Hedgehog. You're not referring to the Las Vegas shooter. That's what it was. Yeah, it was Las Vegas. Sorry. Thank you. That's who I was referring to. Crazy guy in Las Vegas shoots out of his hotel window, kills 50 people at a fucking country music festival. But yeah, what's his name? We don't know his name, right? We don't know his name because you know, the media doesn't like make heroes out of these people. They don't make folk heroes out of mass shooters. So that whole idea that like, oh, I don't politicize I don't publicize their names or whatever, that's basically a fucking cop out. It's a cop out, bullshit excuse so that they don't have to actually do anything for real to stop mass shootings. Anyway, that's my point. Moving on.
In order to presumably create copycats, or at least without regard as to whether they create copycats. We don't mention the names of people like this on this particular show. He was charged with attempted murder after 2 U.S. deputy marshals saw him step out of a taxi cab in front of the justice's house in Chevy Chase, Maryland, early on Wednesday morning, according to federal prosecutors. This particular attempted murderer was dressed in black, carrying a suitcase and a backpack, according to a federal affidavit. Inside the suitcase and backpack, the authorities discovered a black tactical chest rig and tactical knife, a pistol with 2 magazines and ammo, pepper spray, zip ties, a hammer, a screwdriver, a nail punch, a crowbar, a pistol light, and duct tape, in addition to other items, according to the affidavit. According to the affidavit, his plan was to break into the house, kill the justice, and then kill himself. And his motives are perfectly clear. His motives are perfectly clear because he told the police his motives. He said he was upset about the recent school shooting in Uvalde, Texas, which, by the way, that is definitely the proper solution. You're upset about a mass school shooting, so your plan is to kill a justice and maybe members of his family if they stumble upon you.
Yeah, he told the police after he turned himself in. Please keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. He told the police after he turned himself in, if he really wanted to commit suicide, suicide by cop is a real thing. That happens all the time too. In fact, they kind of train police officers for that. That you shouldn't just. That's another reason why cops don't just blow. Should not just blow people away for no reason because person may be trying to commit suicide, right? And yeah, so Ben Shapiro just sort of misled you there. He tried to make it sound like the police caught this guy, right? He didn't mention that the guy left and then turned himself in. You know, you know why? Because that makes him sound less dangerous. That's why. Because that doesn't fit Ben Shapiro's fucking narrative that he was a deranged, insane leftist who was pissed off and brainwashed by the woke crowd or whatever. It doesn't fit his narrative there. The fact that this dude actually turned himself in. Such a fucking liar. Moving on.
He was also upset about a leaked draft of a Supreme Court opinion suggesting the justices were poised to overturn Roe versus Wade, the landmark 1973 pro-abortion decision by the Supreme Court. Now, we said at the time that leaking prospective Supreme Court draft decisions is extremely dangerous. I said this at
Yeah, okay. Fuck you, Ben Shapiro. Okay, so, moving right to yeah, that was the narrative for a while when, after that thing leaked, is that they said, oh, it's so dangerous, because they wanted to get pissed at the fact that it actually leaked, and that was the the conservative like answer so that they didn't want to talk about the actual like draft decision itself. You know, Basically this is just his way of avoiding the question. You know, Blame the leaker, not the actual information. Right. So here's, Ben Shapiro. God, this dude just sort of like this guy doesn't have any original thoughts of his own. Now that I think about it, like everything that Ben Shapiro says is just sort of like the standard GOP conservative Republican talking point. That's like his entire argument. All he does is argue in talking points. He doesn't have any like opinion on anything that is like contrary to the standard Republican talking point on anything. Seriously. Now that I think about it, I don't think he's ever said anything that was contrary to that at all. Like, some pundits actually kind of do have, some politicians, some pundits sometimes will say something contrary to the conservative hive mind. Tommy Lauren, for example, came out in support of abortion, right? She said that, and I think that's one of the reasons why she's like not as famous as she was anymore because a lot of people turned on her after that. She like came out and said, my body, my choice, whatever, right? For example, you know, I can't think of one instance where I've ever heard Ben Shapiro say something that wasn't like, God damn, that didn't conform to the conservative hive mind. I think this guy like fucking I think he like fucking like, what do you call that when you get like focus testing? I think he focus tests his own fucking opinions. Holy fucking shit. You know, there was a big in thing like when people were calling each other NPCs and shit over the last year, that kind of developed as an insult, the idea being that you don't have any like narrative going through your head. You don't think. You have no conflicting opinions on anything. You're just like a non-player character from an RPG. Fucking that's Ben Shapiro, dude. He's a fucking NPC. He just like whatever is the current conservative Republican talking point, is what the guy says. Holy fucking shit! It really is. The more I think about it, that's the more his shtick is to just like is just to like fucking massage people's egos so that they give him money by saying shit they want to hear. What a fucking hack. Moving on.
At the time, I said the day this happened, it put justices' lives in danger because before that decision is actually released, that means that the vote is not actually official. And so if you are a crazy person and you wish to shape the course of future American history, maybe you try to kill one of the justices. I said it was actually a sin connectable,
Oh shit.
even if it is not logically supportable. If you
I just clicked the wrong thing. Where were we? Were like over here, right? Hang on a second.
justice by a left-wing radical spouting the appearance of Joe Biden on Jimmy Kimmel,
No.
these which has extraordinarily strict gun controls.
Shit.
Before that,
All right, I completely like blew it. Sorry guys. Where were we? We were like over here, right?
according to the New York Times, a man armed with a pistol, a knife, and
No.
other in front of the justice's house in Chevy Chase, Maryland, early on Wednesday morning, according to federal
Let's continue
prosecutors.
on from here. Sorry.
This particular attempted murderer was dressed in black, carrying a suitcase and a backpack, according to a federal affidavit. Inside the suitcase and backpack, the authorities discovered a black tactical chest rig and tactical knife, a pistol with 2 magazines and ammo, pepper spray, zip ties, a hammer, a screwdriver, a nail punch, a crowbar, a pistol light, and duct tape, in addition to other items, according to the affidavit. According to the affidavit, his plan was to break into the house, kill the justice, and then kill himself.
Okay.
And
yeah,
his
we've heard
motives are
this.
perfectly clear. His motives are perfectly clear because he told the police his motives. He said he was upset about the recent school shooting in Uvalde,
Here we
Texas, which, by the way, that is definitely the proper solution. You're upset about a mass school Supreme Court. Now, we said at the time that
Here it
leaking
is.
prospective Supreme Court draft
Okay, sorry about that. I totally clicked the wrong thing. This is where we were. All right.
decisions is extremely dangerous. I said this at the time. I said the day this happened, it put justices' lives in danger because before that decision is actually released, that means that the vote is not actually official. And so if you are a crazy person and you wish to shape the course of future American history, maybe you try to kill one of the justices. I said it was actually a sin for Justice Roberts not to, upon the leak, immediately release the decision as the majority decision.
Yep. See that? He should have immediately released it. So there's a lot of theories out there that the person who actually leaked this was one of the Republican staffers because it looked like that Roberts was trying to sway a couple of the other conservative justices into like going the other way. And if you were to actually release this opinion, like leak it like this, then it sort of solidifies that their choices. I wouldn't be surprised if that ends up happening. You notice we haven't really heard very much about the investigation into the leaker. They're probably never going to find him. Apparently, the head justice of the Supreme Court is, Roberts or whatever, is really pissed off at that, apparently. But yeah, kind of makes sense to me. Kind of makes sense that if I were, say, like Amy Coney Barrett's, staff or something, and I knew that this was coming, and I wanted it to happen, that I might decide to leak that on purpose in order to, because if they change their mind, it makes it sound like they're then sort of like bending to political pressure, right? That's kind of what it makes it sound like. So I don't know. But then again, there's a pretty good chance that it may have been one of the liberal justices' people as well, because you can also have the other, maybe they decided to try to use shame in order to like prevent this from happening, and even though like Republicans have no shame, but still. So I don't know. I mean, the jury's still out on that, right? But yeah, I could see why Ben Shapiro would be like, "Oh, you should release the decision immediately," because he's afraid, because he knows. Basically, the reason why he's saying that is because he knows it's extremely unpopular and people like abortion. He knows that. Ben Shapiro, I think, definitely knows the facts. He knows that 70% of the country, including Republicans in that number, support abortion. The majority of Republicans, it's not 70% of Republicans, but the majority of Republicans do support abortion. Overall, overall in the country, 70% of people in the country support abortion. He knows it's extremely unpopular. I don't think it's going to come before the election. I think I think they're going to wait till after the midterms and then they're going to release it, because if they release it beforehand, it's going to tank the Republicans in the midterms and they know it. So, yeah, there's a lot of politicking going on there with that story. I don't know. But jury's still out, though. I just wanted to make that point. Jury's still out about who actually might have leaked that and why. And it really could be both ways at that point. So, at this point, moving on.
because it would create incentive for evil and or crazy people to go and try to kill a justice in the majority in order to change the course of judicial history. I said it at the time, and there were protests immediately.
This is bullshit, because even if Kavanaugh died, even if he was shot, and you know Biden had to appoint another Supreme Court justice, the liberals on the court would still have a minority, and they still wouldn't be able to stop this decision from going through. Republicans have a supermajority on the court now, so even if they did, even if somebody did decide, oh, I'm going to kill one of them, that still wouldn't. They'd have to kill like three, right, in order to give the liberals on the court like a supermajority so that they could stop it. That's what they would have to do. That's what it's at now. It's fucking 6-3. So he would have to kill three other judges. So it's like, so this is bullshit. Basically, this is bullshit. You know, it just doesn't. I mean, this just physically just doesn't add up. I mean, besides the fact that it's like bad reasoning, right? It's just like another dipshit non-argument that Ben Shapiro's throwing out in order to get fake outrage. You know, every single thing this guy says is like, it's just basically outrage fuel. That's how the dude makes his money, by pissing people off so that they tune in to get their 2 minutes hate or whatever. It's kind of exhausting watching this guy, isn't it? Like, you start to feel angry because he's got all this emotion, and the way he talks is so indignant. And I can totally understand it, because then, I could easily see me in an alternate universe sitting here, like, some alternate universe like in Rick and Morty or some shit, where like I went the wrong way down the alt-right rabbit hole or some whatever, turned into some kind of fucking like, you know, crazy incel loser or some shit. I could easily see alternate universe me, like, falling for Ben Shapiro, right? And thinking that the guy's smart. I can easily see that being a thing, because the way he speaks is very like, he speaks the way that people think a smart person should sound. Very fast, very sure of himself, right? It just happens to be completely 100% full of shit in every possible way. Like, down to like the guys like, you know, just idiotic non-reasoning, right? Like, Ben Shapiro's a master at taking something that's not only not true, but something that doesn't make any sense, and then making somebody think that it's like correct. Just like this. Just like this whole like, that was his motive to go change history, when it literally makes no sense, because that's not what would happen, right? If the guy actually did shoot, Canova, he wouldn't have changed history at all. I mean, he would change history in the fact that there'd be a different Supreme Court justice, maybe, but it wouldn't stop this decision, because it's bullshit. Moving on.
Upon the leak at Justice Kavanaugh's house, you'll recall, and the home of the other justices. Apparently, according to this particular suspect, he indicated he believed that the justice he intended to kill would side with Second Amendment decisions that would loosen gun control laws. So this guy is from California, which has extraordinarily strict gun controls. transported a gun.
Wait a second. What? Go back some. What did you just say?
Loosen gun control laws.
Loosen gun control
So
laws.
this guy, killer suspect, he indicated he believed that the justice he intended to kill would side with Second Amendment decisions that would loosen gun control laws.
So, okay. So he thought Kavanaugh would loosen gun control. Okay. Okay, that makes sense. Move
So
on.
this guy is from California, which has extraordinarily strict gun controls. Transported a gun across state lines to Justice Kavanaugh's house, and then proceeded to attempt to kill the justice in order to promote gun control, which means this will be out of the headlines before it even begins. In fact,
Okay. Kind of where to start with this. So he mentioned California. Why did he mention California? Right? Because California is, of course, the, one step up from hell in conservative circles. They always like to make fun of California, right? Just Ben Shapiro saying that the guy is from California is enough, is a dog whistle in itself. Okay. Whether it's, even if it was, yeah, it's true. Okay, the guy's from California, but even if he wasn't, right? It's sort of like just the fact that he mentioned that already puts an image in his viewers. The typical Ben Shapiro viewer puts an image in their head of, you know, a blue-haired feminist, like trans commie drug addict. Like this is how people picture Californians, right? On the right wing, especially. They think California is like a hellhole where people are allowed to just shit in the streets and there's just homeless people all over the place and blah 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 blah. This is what they think California is, right? And yeah, there's a lot of homeless people in California and things, there's a lot of problems here. But there's a lot of great things in California too. So I want to make that point before I go off on another tangent, right? I want to make that point that just him saying the word California is a smear. Okay. That's the first thing. Second thing is, that would be like I can understand why that would piss someone off. See, what he's not getting right, first off, is that we don't have very much in the way of federal regulations on guns anyway. Not really. It's not as strict as it used to be when it comes to things like assault rifles and shit like that, or assault weapons or whatever the fuck they're called. We used to have bans on stuff like that anymore. We don't. Now, why would that upset someone to think that you know, a Supreme Court justice might make it easier to get lethal weapons and kill somebody, right? That doesn't surprise me at all. That does not surprise me at all that that would be a motive, right? See, here's the thing, and this is why people need to this is why you need to kind of like if you're really into politics, right? You should kind of tune out once in a while, right? I tend to over every weekend, I sort of tune out politics and then come back on maybe Sunday night or something. Because if you eat, sleep, and breathe politics, it has a way of sort of infesting your mind, right? To where you start to worry about shit that really you should not be worrying about, right? I can 100% understand if like this being a motive that somebody would go crazy, someone who wasn't right in the head would use the idea that Brett Kavanaugh might remove gun restrictions as one of the motives to go kill him. I can 100% believe that, right? It sounds crazy, and it is. The reason why I believe it is because how can I put this? How can I put this? Being, well, it's sort of like being too into news and politics can create a lot of anxiety about things, right? And and if you don't take time to decompress, it's sort of that in and of itself can lead to, things like panic attacks. And I could easily see somebody who isn't all there mentally kind of latching on to current events like that. And, maybe that pushes them over the edge a little bit. You know what I mean? Like, the thing about people that flip out and go on murder sprees to begin with is that they become obsessed with stuff. You know what I mean? That's usually like, and politics is something that's very easy to become obsessed over, you know, especially like the conspiracy people who are like susceptible to conspiracy theories, right? Very, very easy to become obsessed with these things. And then you end up, you know, staying up late at night, right? Worrying about things like, what's the Supreme Court decision going to be like? What's this law going to pass? What if the wrong person gets voted in the election tomorrow? Shit like that. Kind of like I saw a story a long time ago, like after Trump got elected, where lots of people needed therapy because he won. And I remember thinking at the time, God, that's ridiculous. Like, how can anybody put in so much of their identity into an election that if they lose the election, they have to go to fucking therapy? Like, and I remember thinking that was pathetic. This was like, 2016, right? But I can totally understand that now. I can totally understand someone who just lives politics 24/7 and really, really wants something to happen and then it doesn't happen, or they get the wrong result or whatever, right? And, I can really see that just being a thing that just takes over somebody's mind and then they fucking can't handle it. And they got to go talk to a fucking, like, a shrink or whatever, because now all of a sudden they can't sleep at night and they're having panic attacks and shit like that. And I can easily see someone who's like, mentally ill or schizophrenic or whatever, who's hearing voices, prone to violent outbreaks, whatever. I can definitely see that person being a news junkie and, like, you know, this becoming an unhealthy obsession. There's not much difference between that and someone who's into like conspiracy theory stuff, someone who's into like something like QAnon. You know what I mean? Not a big difference there at all. So no, it doesn't surprise me at all. And what's kind of funny that Ben Shapiro is like indignant about this because a large part of his fan base falls into that category, right? The sort of conspiracy minded, in fact, he plays into a lot of that stuff in order to get views. Ben Shapiro saying shit about trans rights and stuff like that. You know what I mean? There's another video of him that I'm thinking of making fun of, where he like loses his shit because Fox News does a halfway, decent pro trans segment about a family and stuff. I don't know if you've seen that. There's another video Ben Shapiro made of him just losing his fucking mind over that in like pure like rage, right? So he definitely uses this stuff to enrich himself. He knows the psychological effect that this type of programming has on people. So yeah, that doesn't surprise me at all. Does not surprise me in the slightest. Anyway, kind of went off on a tangent there. Let's get back to the video.
It was pretty much out of the headlines immediately. Again, this was not played as the top story by the mainstream media last night. It was not.
Mm.
There were other stories to cover, like the House passing a doomed gun control bill.
Yeah, the reason why this wasn't the top story is because, once again, no one died. Okay. The guy didn't break into the house. The guy turned himself in. That's why it wasn't the top story. See, if someone were to be murdered, if he would have shot the cops instead of turning himself into them, then it would be the top story. But because nothing actually happened, then it really wasn't. I mean, was it even really a threat, really? I mean, I guess, right? I guess it was a threat. I guess if you show up with a bomb to a place and then you call the police on yourself, I mean, technically, yeah, there was a bomb, you know, there was a mad bomber there. You know what I mean? Like, but that's why it wasn't like the top fucking story because it didn't happen. And not only did it not happen, there wasn't even like an apprehension. Like it's kind of just a footnote. So Ben Shapiro's getting all mad and indignant because it's not like the top fucking thing everybody's talking about. Kind of sounds like bullshit to me, doesn't it? Kind of sounds like he's trying to use this to deflect from the incredibly unpopular and weak stance that conservatives and Republicans have when it comes to mass shooters and gun control. That's what it kind of sounds like to me. And he was just talking shit about the House passing a bill here. Seems exactly like I'm on the fucking like nose with that. Let's see what else he says. Let's rewind it back 5 seconds.
Was the top story by the mainstream media last night. It was not. There were other stories to cover, like the House passing a doomed gun control bill or the appearance of Joe Biden on Jimmy Kimmel. These were major stories. But the attempted murder of a Supreme Court justice by a left-wing radical spouting ideologically indistinguishable ideas from those of mainstream leftists, that Brett Kavanaugh is responsible for the end of abortion in the country, that Brett Kavanaugh is a gun nut, all the rest of this. That was just not a headline. In fact, the New York
Spouting indistinguishable ideas from the mainstream left. You mean kind of like how the Buffalo shooter was spouting indistinguishable ideas from the mainstream right in his manifesto that he wrote about the Great Replacement theory? You mean kind of like that? I mean, what's the difference between those two things, Ben Shapiro? What's the difference between a guy that goes to a Supreme Court justice's house with a gun and a bunch of other stuff, turns himself in and doesn't kill anyone, and a guy that goes to a grocery store 2 hours away from where he lived and murders 20 black people? Specifically, and goes to that grocery store specifically to kill black people, and then writes a 128 page manifesto explaining the reason why he did it. And then the headliner on the biggest news network in the country says something that is ideologically indistinguishable from that the same day. Like, the night before, right? What's the difference between those two things, I wonder? Maybe there's a reason why one of those things was top headline news for fucking a week and the other one is a blip on the back page of the New York Times. Kind of seems a little like that makes a little bit of sense to me, right? Just more fucking reckless flailing from the Ben Shapiro idiot machine here, folks. Moving on.
York
Wait, oh,
Times
fuck.
online
Okay.
front page, as of yesterday afternoon, did not have this story on it. There were 16 stories on their front page, and this was not on it. So the New York Times reported it. They just kind of buried it. In fact, if you look the very next morning at this story is not above the fold on the page. It is really not below the fold on the page. Okay, this story appears in a tiny little area of the. I'm going to count the number of stories real fast that are above this story on the New York Times online website.
He's making a pretty big deal about this, right? Why would that need to be the top story again? Like, really, why would it need to be the top story? Let's look at what actually happened, right? Did anyone die? No. Did the guy shoot his grandmother before he went over there, like the Uvalde shooter did? No. Did he get himself into a classroom and murder 18 children like the Uvalde shooter? No. Did Brett Kavanaugh get shot in the head the way that Gaffy Giffords was? No. Was he even shot? I think it was Steve. Wasn't Steve Scalise shot at a baseball game, if I remember right? Steve Scalise. How the fuck you spell that guy's name? Shot baseball, right? Yeah, congressional baseball shooting, right? You know, was he shot there? Like the same way that Steve Scalise was shot? No, right? So why would it need to be the top story, right? Like it doesn't make any sense. I mean, Ben Shapiro seems to be very indignant over the fact that, the entire fucking nation wasn't out blaming Democrats because of this, you know. Yeah, I mean, can you? I don't know. Did the guy write a 128-page manifesto, right? That like outlined his like opposition, some fucking crazy ass leftist theory or whatever that Rachel Maddow was saying on her show the day before, right? No, I mean, it doesn't make any. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense. It's this is bullshit outrage. It's bullshit outrage. It's not even like justifiable outrage. Most transparent shit. Anyway.
Front page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
All right, let's skip ahead here. You made your point, Shapiro. You're an idiot. Let's move ahead a few pages, a few seconds.
Winger attempting to murder a Supreme Court justice. We have weeks of conversation in the legacy media about the evils of America and white supremacy and conservatism and all the rest of the things that the media like to lump together as the Republican Party agenda. Officers from Montgomery.
All right, we actually need to rewind that. Sorry, I shouldn't have skipped ahead. Let's rewind it a little bit. I want to hear what he just said there.
As of this show, there are 38 stories, 38 above this story on the New York Times homepage. Okay. You want to know why? The answer is because this person is a left-winger who's attempting to murder a Supreme Court justice. If this person been a right-winger attempting to murder a Supreme Court justice, we have weeks of conversation in the legacy media about the evils of America and white supremacy and conservatism and all the rest of the things that the media like to lump together as the Republican Party agenda.
So, is white supremacy and conservatism not the Republican agenda? Am I hearing that right? I mean, I thought conservatism was the Republican agenda, right? I still think that some of them would be opposed to white supremacy, but obviously not enough because they are the ones that the white supremacists vote for, right? Put it that way. So, yes, not every Republican who is currently in office in Washington, D.C. is a white supremacist, but some of them are. Some of them are. Louis Gohmert, for example, white supremacist. Madison Cawthorn, white supremacist. Thank God he is going away soon, right? More than that, I mean, those are just the two I can think of off the top of my head. Okay. Marjorie Taylor Greene was at fucking Nick Fuentes's, like, fucking, what do you call that thing? AFPAC or whatever the fuck that is, right? Spoke at his event, with like, I mean, Nick Fuentes is a genuine bona fide Nazi, right? Marjorie Taylor Greene went to spoke at that guy's event. So it's like, yes, the Republicans are, and they endorse white supremacy. They do. This is not a smear anymore. This is not a thing that you can like, 10 years ago, or whatever, during the Obama years or some shit like that. If you were to call Republicans Nazis, they'd be like, "Oh, you're just, you know, just an insult. You're just name calling, whatever, blah 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 blah." It's like, no, now we have the receipts now, right? Now they're like essentially fucking mask off on it. Right. So is he trying to say that these things are not endorsed by the Republican Party? Because they kind of are. I mean, you have plenty of time. The Republicans have had plenty of time to purge these assholes from their party, to get rid of these people, right? And they didn't. They made a conscious decision to endorse these guys, right? I think really what really kind of put the nail in the coffin for it was George Floyd and the whole Black Lives Matter movement. I think that's what really drove, you know, the GOP to start basically take the mask off when it comes to white supremacy, right? It's like, I don't know. I think Ben Shapiro's in, what he's still in that phase where he's still trying to maintain positive like plausible deniability about all this stuff. Right. Ben Shapiro likes to pretend that he has integrity, but we know better, don't we, folks? Moving on. Play, damn it. There we go.
Officers from Montgomery County Police Department arrived and found the shooter on the phone with the communication center. Apparently, he called the cops and got himself arrested after he realized that he was not going to succeed in his attempt to kill Kavanaugh. He was taken into custody without incident. If convicted, he could face up to 20 years in prison. He told police he had begun thinking about how to give his life a purpose and decided to kill a Supreme Court justice after finding the justice's address online. What?
Yeah, I like how he just glossed over that. Oh yeah, he turned himself in. He was taken without incident. 5 minutes ago he was making it sound like the cops fucking apprehended him and this is what they found in his bag and all this other shit. And it's like, oh, you forgot to say that they didn't fucking that he called the police on himself. Forgot to mention that. This dude is so dude, he's just what really gets me about Ben Shapiro is that he's so disingenuous. That's what it is. That's the word for Ben Shapiro, disingenuous. Right. Like, I don't know. I've just never seen someone who could just so casually mislead people, you know, like this guy can, without it even being like I wonder if he does it on purpose or if he really has sort of gotten high off his own supply. You know what I mean? Like I wonder if he actually really knows what he's doing or if it's just like this lying to people, this misleading people thing has just sort of taken over his identity and now he doesn't even know that he does it. Like is Ben Shapiro a true believer, you know? Or is he just like a bullshit grifter? Like I think Candace Owens is a bullshit grifter. I think she knows what she's saying is bullshit, you know? And so she sort of crafts her image to be this sort of outrage merchant. I think she knows it's bullshit. I think Alex Jones knows that he's full of shit, and he's even admitted as such in his he had a custody battle for his children, and where he basically admitted that it was like a character and all that, you know. I think somebody like Charlie Kirk kind of believes his own hype. I think Charlie Kirk, for example, is a true believer. Marjorie Taylor Greene is definitely a true believer. She's too fucking stupid to know that the shit she's saying is ridiculous and how fucking dumb it sounds. Ben Shapiro, I don't know. Like, my instinct tells me that Ben Shapiro knows it's all bullshit, right? But I don't know, something about it, because I don't think he's not as intelligent as everybody fucking thinks he is. Like, he definitely, he might actually believe it. And if he does, that makes him I don't know. I mean, I guess there's something that you can respect about someone who actually believes their convictions. it makes him if that were the case, it would make him less of a grifter, but more of an idiot. Right? Because the things he's saying are like most of the time demonstrably false. And when they're not, when they're not, then they're usually just very badly thought out opinions, like extremely bad outlining opinions. I don't know. Anyway, moving on. I don't know. I still kind of think he's bullshitting. I still kind of think that it's all a big grift and he knows it's all bullshit and he's saying it anyway because it makes him money. But I don't know, man. Maybe I'm kind of like 60-40 on that now. Moving on.
But who could have been revealing the justice's address online? Who would have been doing that? Oh, you mean the activist groups who said that you should gather outside Justice Kavanaugh's house? Prompted, motivated, and cheered by members of the Democratic Party and some members of the media? Lest you think that this is an exaggeration, let me remind you that this is precisely what many on the Democratic side said. Hey, Jen Psaki, for example, was asked just a couple of weeks ago about protesters outside justices' homes.
What does people protesting outside of the justices' homes have to do with a crazy person that went to go kill this person? What do those two things have to do with each other? Like, I mean, do you think that if there were no protesters outside of Canavas' house, that this guy would have not gone there? Is that what he's trying to say? So, can you name for me examples? So there were people protesting outside of Ted Cruz's house when he like basically split. You remember when Texas was freezing to death and Ted Cruz just bailed and went to Cancun? People went to his house after that and like fucking protested there. Did somebody try to kill Ted Cruz? Right? Like, no, no. See, people go to politicians' houses and shit all the time to go protest there. You know why? Because that's your right as a United States citizen. You have a right to protest, right? And, as long as you do it in a lawful manner at any time, anywhere, that's actually in the Constitution. You know, you have a right to peaceably gather, right? To address to petition the government to have your grievances addressed, right? And it doesn't say in the Constitution you have a right to peaceably gather except outside of the house of a politician or a Supreme Court justice. It doesn't say that, right? So there may be like towns or cities that have laws against that. Well, you can't have these, you know, you can't have a gathering here of X number of people without a permit, whatever, blah, blah, blah. That might be the case, right? But there is nothing more American. There is nothing that is more in touch and in sync with the spirit of democracy, the spirit of the United States than protesting, right? Because that's what the United States is all about. The United States is all about people who don't trust each other, creating a system of government to ensure that everything's equal. And when shit's not equal, you are allowed to tell them that you think it's not equal. That's what protesting is, right? Protesting is telling, is you through, taking an action in order to get your grievances known. That is the most American thing that I can think of. It's literally one of our rights. We actually have that. You don't have a right to, drive a car. You know, you don't have a right to, you don't actually have a right to like marry somebody of a skin color of your choice, right? Or you don't actually have a right to, um, do a lot of the things that you think you have, right? The same rights for. But you do have that right is specifically laid out in the Constitution there, right? So please tell me how that leads to murder. Because that's what Ben Shapiro did. Ben Shapiro just associated protesting outside of somebody's house with murder. How did those two things lead from one to the other? How, I mean, was the guy outside the dude's house? Was he outside Canava's house for a little while and then said, you know what, this is not effective. I'm going to go shoot him instead. Is that what happened? I mean, square that circle, Ben Shapiro, because he just made the inference there. You notice he planted in the minds of his viewers that these two things are linked, that these two things are the same. So now anybody who protests outside of the house of a Supreme Court justice is just as bad as someone who wants to go kill them. This is the idea that he's planting in his viewers' minds now, right? Because Ben Shapiro is a fucking idiot. All right, 5 more minutes and then I gotta end this because I'm fucking tired as fuck. Actually, you know what? I think why don't we just end it now? It's already almost 11:30. Anyhow, maybe I'll get to the end of this. We got through 7.5 minutes of a 12 minute diatribe from Ben Shapiro. There's only so much I can take from Ben Shapiro because Ben Shapiro is a moron. Um, but he did do this very ridiculous anti-trans rant where he just really sort of loses his shit. And I think we'll go over that one next. Maybe on Wednesday. I don't know. I won't be able to do a stream tomorrow morning because I have to, I have shit I got to do tomorrow, unfortunately. That's why I'm doing it tonight. So, anyway, guys, thank you all for coming. The guys, those of you who came tonight. Lewis the Hedgehog, thank you for showing up. Let's see. What did you say there? Nearly every episode of Rick and Morty is an example of why the Prime Directive exists in Star Trek. Yes, it is. Exactly. You know. Have they done an episode of Rick and Morty where they make fun of Star Trek? I'm surprised they haven't yet. I haven't really been keeping up with Rick and Morty, really. I haven't seen all of season 5. It's I don't know, there's too much good TV out there, man. I've been watching Moon Knight now because that actually is actually pretty good. So, I still have like 3 of those left. Anyway, man, I think I'm fucking tired, so I think I'm gonna end this. But thank you all for coming. Please like and subscribe, all that shit. And if you like what I do, whatever, blah blah blah, you know the story. I have an Etsy shop. I have some other shit. I'll put the links down in the thing. I'm too tired now to actually look them up. So, but thanks a lot, guys. I'll be back not tomorrow, but I think Wednesday we'll do one. And the stream on Wednesday is also going to be us making fun of Ben Shapiro. It'll be called Ben Shapiro is an idiot about trans rights or something similar to that. Anyway, guys, I gotta end this. Adios.